Hey guys! So, for a while now I've been thinking about different sorts of content that I could add to my channel to sort of expand the type of stuff that I do. And one of the things that I've kind of thought about doing for a while now has been to do something like in a vlog style. Something where I can just say something about either an issue, maybe a current event going on as far as gaming, or Pokemon more specifically, maybe. Just my thoughts on, or even anything, not necessarily gaming related, maybe, who knows. Just something where I can say my 2 cents in a way that's mostly unscripted and with very minimal editing. So, I decided now's as good a time as any because there's a lot of Pokemon Sun and Moon speculation, or people giving their opinions, top 10 lists of what they'd like to see in the game. So I figured I might as well get my feet wet with this as well, using this as a good starting point. So, in this new thing that I'm going to title Sweet Vlog, because I put sweet in front of a lot of things on my channel, I think it works, but I'm gonna entitle this Sweet Vlog, and I'm gonna just give sort of my thoughts about something, and in this case I want to talk a little bit about Pokemon Sun and Moon, because I really haven't talked that much about it, other than giving it, a couple of passing mentions in my Let's Plays as I'm doing commentary or whatever. So here it goes. I'm gonna give my thoughts, some of my, initial reactions, my expectations, what I think will most likely be involved in these games, and then a couple of my hopes, things that I would like to see, whether or not they'll actually happen. So, alright, here we go. First off, for my initial reaction to Pokemon Sun and Moon, the night before, or the day before, whenever it came out, whenever it was leaked that Pokemon had supposedly trademarked the names Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon, the day before that direct where the games were actually announced, I kind of took a pause, things like this have turned up, fruitless before, where Nintendo was just, or the Pokemon Company, I guess, or Game Freak, whatever, have trademarked something, I think they trademarked Delta Emerald as an example. They've trademarked something and then not come out with the game. They trademarked Delta Emerald to, I guess, protect against anybody trying to come out with that game, a pirated version of that game and trying to pass it off as a Pokemon game. So things to protect sort of their brand, even though they're not necessarily going to come out with a game like that. We didn't get a Delta Emerald, obviously, because I think the Delta episode of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire pretty much sufficed for a Delta Emerald, even if that wasn't what some people were hoping for, but I think that is what the case was. So when Sun and Moon were originally, it was leaked that Pokemon had trademarked these things. It was kind of weird. I thought, well, you never know, maybe they're just trademarking this, they want to keep those name options available, but it could be a hoax too, because some of those supposed leaks had been hoaxes, but it was from a fairly reliable source, I guess. So then, of course, it turned out the next day that they are indeed real, and instantly the hype train began. It was pretty cool. I don't think most of us really saw it coming. We were expecting something to be announced eventually, because it had been a while without Pokemon announcing a new main series game. I know most of us, and myself included, were probably expecting them to announce some kind of next iteration of the Kalos games, Pokemon Z, or X2 and Y2, or XZ and YZ, or whatever the speculated titles were going to be, something focused around Zygarde, and we thought, those of us who thought that was coming, were probably basing a lot of our thoughts on, well, of course, every sort of generation has had a second iteration, at least one other iteration, and with Black and White, they came out with Black 2 and White 2, even though we were expecting Pokemon Gray, but they basically were Pokemon Gray, but two different versions of them, because they did focus around the Gray legendary, which was Kyurem, but they came up with two slightly different takes on it. So it was the same, but it was still basically in our same expectations of the third game that kind of combines elements of both, or maybe a director's cut, if you will, of the game, except this was a completely new story. But it kind of took the idea of that third title and made it a sequel instead, I guess, is what it really did. And here you have now X and Y came out, and it's been a few years. We got the Hoenn remakes, which a lot of people were excited about. They were cool. But we were wondering, okay, when there's probably going to be a next game. And now Sun and Moon have been announced, and it doesn't seem... It seems like, well, we know from the little teaser that we got that there's at least some new Pokemon in there, and I think Magearna is probably confirmed for Sun and Moon, but I'll get to that later in my expectations section. But basically, we were expecting more Gen 6, I guess, and we got what might be a Gen 7, or some people are calling it Gen 6.5. We'll just have to see which one it ends up being, but there's different theories. But of course, right now, we don't really have that much information, so, I mean, my thoughts now, I'm kind of curious. I want to know more information. How is this going to be a Generation 6 sequel, like a Generation 6.5? I know there will be at least some new Pokemon, but will it be sort of the same generation, or will it be completely new, completely different? Well, that's where I'm going to get into my expectations here, some of which I think are going to be some of the obvious stuff. So as far as expectations go, I think it's, well, like I said, it's really safe to say that we'll be getting some new Pokemon. We saw that, what looked like a hummingbird Pokemon in the little teaser. We're pretty sure that Magearna will probably be a Sun and Moon Pokemon, since it's getting its own movie premiere or debut, I guess, and that's typically how new generations have been introduced, through the Pokemon anime in the movie, in one of the movies from the preceding generation. So for example, we had Togepi in the first generation season of the anime, and Marill and Snubbull in the first movie short, and then so on and so forth. Each new generation has had some of the Pokemon in it revealed in the previous generation, in the anime or in the movies. So I think we can say Magearna probably will be a Sun and Moon Pokemon. As far as Volcanion's data was actually in X and Y, and I don't recall, I think I should do my research on this, but at the time of recording this, I have to admit I don't remember if Volcanion is actually getting any distributions in the Gen 6 games. But it's quite possible that there might being a way to obtain Volcanion in Sun and Moon, which would make sense to me if you listen to certain theories. Like, I think Birdkeeper Toby had a theory that was fairly convincing. I mean, we don't know, we have no way of knowing if it's true or not until the games come out, but that the generation, or the Sun and Moon games, will take place in a region based off of Hawaii, which, if that is in fact the case, a Pokemon like Volcanion would be able to play a pretty crucial role, I think. Hawaii is well known for having volcanoes. That seems like a really good match. Speaking of a new region, I do think that this will be a new region. We did see the quick shot of whatever that building was with the statue, I can't remember, in the teaser, and it looked like something completely new. It looked like it might have been a more, I might want to say tropical, maybe not a tropical region, but something that you would find less touristy. I mean, Kalos was pretty touristy. You had the tourist trainer class. It was based on France, but I mean touristy in more of a beachside, coastal way. So I think it might be safe to say that we'll either get a new region, whether or not it's near Kalos, whether it's adjacent, or whether it's completely far away from it. Again, we have no way of knowing, but I do expect it to be a new region, whether or not it's related to Kalos. Also, one more thing to add on my expectations, I do expect that we'll probably get some new Mega Evolutions, as we got in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which that was another case of sort of a Generation 6.5, because even though they didn't add new Pokemon, they added new Mega Evolutions to already existing Pokemon that were not in the game data for X and Y. So as a matter of fact, when you battle those two games with each other, you can't bring in any new Mega Evolutions because the data is not available in X and Y. So you kind of already did get a new sort of thing that was technically part of Generation 6, but with new Mega Evolutions, and I would expect there to be some new Mega Evolutions in Sun and Moon as well. As far as which ones we get, I don't know, although I would probably be willing to bet that we might get some more starter Mega Evolutions. We already have the first and third generations that have Mega Evolutions. Maybe we'll get second gen starter Mega Evolutions. Maybe we'll get some more Generation 5 Mega Evolutions, because if I remember correctly, the only one currently is Audino. Maybe we'll get another Gen 6 Mega Evolution, the only one of those right now being Diancie. So who knows, maybe, but I do expect we'll probably see some new Mega Evolutions. And now moving on from my initial thoughts and my expectations, these are more my hopes. These are things that I have varying opinions on what the likelihood that these will actually make it into the games, but these are things that I would like to see, regardless. So the first thing is, as many people would say, I would like to see a return to trainer customization. I know a lot of people would probably agree with that. And I think there's a good chance that that will continue, because I believe it was a pretty popular feature in X and Y. And I'm pretty sure the only reason Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did not include it was because they were remakes. Like, they were, on certain things, certain features, they were very faithful to the original Ruby and Sapphire, including, like, to the extent of the precedent of Pokemarts being a part of Pokemon Centers inside of Pokemon Centers, the precedent that had been set at Generation 5. They even separated the Pokemarts for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire the way they had been previously. I don't think they're going to continue doing that. I think they'd be more likely to continue the precedent that they had set with Black and White, keeping the Pokemarts in the Pokemon Centers. Now, similarly, I would think, I'm not sure enough of it to make it an expectation, but I would be pretty comfortable to say that they're going to bring back trainer customization for Sun and Moon. Hopefully with new options and everything. I mean, we'll certainly be getting some new characters, new player characters, so probably new customization options as well, which would be cool. Now, there are a couple of hopes for Sun and Moon that I think a lot of people have been wanting, and I'll join them on that, which would be, it would be nice to have Pokemon be able to follow you around. I understand why the more Pokemon you add, now plus being rendered in 3D, why this could be a touchy thing and an issue from a technical standpoint to implement. But it would be kind of cool. They implemented in X and Y sort of Pokemon in the overworld that you could interact with. You could ride a Skiddo or a Go-Goat, which, by the way, I only recently learned that apparently Skiddo's official pronunciation is Skidoo, and that doesn't even make any sense. I could do a whole vlog on just that, but I digress. Let's get back to the point. Also, Rhyhorn, riding Rhyhorn and Mamoswine, I mean, those were kind of, they were a bit lackluster compared to how fun it should be to ride a Pokemon, but, you know, then we got the Eon Flute in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which let you soar on Mega Latios or Latias, and while I don't expect that to make a return in Sun and Moon, I think it shows that we've had some interactable Pokemon options. So now the possibility of Pokemon following you around as they did in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, I think it would be a bit far-fetched to expect that that will make a return. However, maybe at least more options for interacting with Pokemon in the overworld, and maybe more ways to interact with your own Pokemon. Not just Pokemon-Amie, but to actually interact with your own Pokemon in the overworld. We'll have to see. Another thing that a lot of people have mentioned, probably in their own videos, but I'm going to mention it too, I would like to see multiple save files in Sun and Moon. Multiple Pokemon save files. That has not been standard for the Pokemon series, and so I fully expect that to not happen. But I will just sort of add my vote for what it's worth, I guess, add my 2 cents that I do agree that that would be a good idea, because it's hard when you spend so much time training up your Pokemon and you want to maybe play through the game again, but you don't want to restart the game over again. It's a little bit easier now, at least with Pokemon Bank. You could transfer over all your Pokemon in an easier way. But it's still kind of difficult. I remember I used to have what was called the Mega Memory Card when Gold, Silver, and Crystal were out, and I would use that. You could store save files on the memory card for Game Boy games, and I would use that to allow myself to play through Gold, Silver, and Crystal multiple times, which is probably why Gen 2, I think, is the generation I've spent the most time playing overall. So if multiple save files ever comes out, that'll be great. I really don't expect it to, though. Another thing I would like to be addressed in Sun and Moon, and I think there's a reasonable, I'm about 50-50 on whether or not this will actually be the case, is I want there to be some sort of tie-in to Kalos, just to sort of answer some of the unanswered issues or the incomplete storylines, I guess you could say. Things about, maybe more about AZ's backstory, more about Zygarde, of course, because Zygarde just had all of these forms revealed, the 10%, 50% its regular form, the perfect form, the Zygarde cell, all sorts of things, little blobby. And we didn't get a Pokemon Z, which would have seemed like the perfect vehicle to like be all about Zygarde and all about Zygarde lore and stuff. But who knows, maybe there's been plenty of theorization out there. There's some pretty good videos you could check out that have gone into some detail, speculating as to why they think that in Sun and Moon, Zygarde will play a big role and you'll be able to get its forms in there. So we'll have to see about that. That would be kind of cool. I do hope that there is some sort of way that it gets addressed in there. Even if it means somebody was saying that they would like to go back to Kalos the way that in Gold and Silver, once you completed the game in Johto, you went back to Kanto, which I don't expect that, even if you did go back to Kalos, I wouldn't expect that they'd actually have a full working, going through all 8 Kalos gyms again, and, you know, facing the champion that was the previous game's player character. I don't expect it to be that full-fledged, but it would be kind of interesting if you just had some sort of post-game that took you there, maybe that had to do with Zygarde or something. Again, we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see, you know, that would also imply what happened to Team Flare and all that stuff. Did it get disbanded or did it get continued by someone like Malva? But that would be kind of cool, if to just address it in some way, even if it was a more distant way, or if this new region that we're going to maybe was the one that Kalos was at war with in the war 3,000 years ago. Just some kind of connection to tie up a few loose ends would be kind of cool. Also, I'm curious about the Ash Greninja that we've been seeing in the anime. The whole thing of, like, Pokemon not really fusing with their trainers, but adopting characteristics of their trainers to represent a strong bond with them, sort of sounds similar to Mega Evolution, and yet distinct. I have a hard time thinking that this would actually appear in the games because the Pokemon would have to adopt features of the trainer, and especially if there's trainer customization, I don't foresee that being a thing, at least that you, the player, can obtain in the game. But who knows? Because I think I did see another theory. I should link all of these, but I don't know if I could go back and find all of them. But there's another theory that was saying that this sort of Ash Greninja thing is a type of thing that might happen in Sun and Moon, and they used the symbol on the logo to give them that sort of evidence that they need to figure it out, just like the little DNA symbol that ended up being the Mega Evolution symbol was in the X and Y logos. I don't know, will it happen? We'll see. And now finally to the last hope for Sun and Moon, the last major one that was on the list, and I actually got this idea listening to someone else describe what they were expecting from Pokemon Sun and Moon, or what they were hoping for, or just in any new Pokemon games. And this has been a thing for a long time, and that is the option of getting rid of HMs. Now once again, this is something that I don't expect by a long shot this would ever happen, but I did, in listening to this argument, I did formulate what I think would be kind of a cool compromise that Pokemon could do if they ever did want to eliminate HMs. So, first of all, HMs, they are, you give them to your Pokemon, and so you can do things in the overworld. Surf, you can be ferried across the water, fly, you can basically teleport to places instantly in the game. Strength, move boulders to clear your path, cut trees to clear your path, etc. And to me, in one way, it's kind of a cool thing. Like, when you consider when Pokemon first started, what made it different as an RPG, and I think one of the things was that you could use your party members, your Pokemon, to use their powers in the overworld where you would normally use items. Like, instead of getting an axe or something to cut down a tree in your way, you use a Pokemon that can cut down a tree. And so in that regard, I think the idea of HMs are really cool. But of course, HMs have a lot of bad points as well. They take up valuable move slots depending on whether your Pokemon can even learn the HM move. You might have to bring an unfortunately named HM slave on your team, just there taking up a slot on your team just for the purpose of teaching HMs. And then if you like to develop a bond with your Pokemon, like a lot of people do, you feel kind of bad that you have this one Pokemon tagging along just to use HMs. It's kind of an annoyance, I will say. the novelty that it has is kind of outweighed by the fact that you have these moves, most of which aren't very good moves, except for Surf and Fly is decent. You have these moves that you're required to use to progress through the game, and most of them aren't that good, and they're hard to delete or impossible in the first generation even. So I understand completely why people would want them to be removed as far as being these HM moves, just have them be regular Pokemon moves and then use items instead to get through the game, part of the overworld. But I have a different idea, because I do think it's really cool that Pokemon has this little uniqueness to it that you actually use your Pokemon to get across different places in the region. So I had a thought that instead of having these HM moves that are required to move throughout the land, what if you had these certain abilities, like the ability to ferry a person across the water, the ability to fly your trainer somewhere, the ability to cut down a tree, have them just be inherent things that certain Pokemon can do. So for example, you catch a water-type Pokemon, and it automatically has the ability to ferry you across the water. You catch a flying Pokemon, or any other Pokemon that would normally be able to learn Fly, and it can fly you places. Same thing with Strength, Rock Smash, etc. And in some ways that could be like, oh, maybe a little bit OP, like you pick a water starter and all of a sudden you can surf across the water. But it could still be tied to, you need a certain gym badge to be able to use that ability, sort of like what was the case with HMs. And it could work out, because I could think a gym badge, you already use gym badges to determine whether or not a traded Pokemon at a certain level will obey you. So you could use it as, once you get a certain gym badge, you've developed your skill as a trainer enough to the point where you can train a Pokemon to use its abilities to cut down a tree. You can train a Pokemon to trust you enough to be able to carry you across the water, etc. So I think it would still tie into the you need to gradually increase your skill as a trainer to be able to master all these different abilities of Pokemon. But just have them be inherent abilities of the Pokemon so that you don't have to waste a precious move slot on a move that might be okay, but it might be useless depending on what the move is. You'd still run into maybe the issue of needing to pick a certain Pokemon and put it in your party to use a certain skill, but I think it would free up things more in general. So again, I don't expect this to happen at all ever. I think HMs are probably here to stay. They might change what the HMs are from time to time, take out some ones that are particularly bad like they did with Defog, but in general I think they're here to stay. However, if they were going to find some sort of HM replacement, for me personally, that would be what I would prefer, something like that, where the Pokemon can just inherently do these things, and you need to increase your rank as a trainer to be able to get them to do it. And that's about it for now, so maybe when more information about Pokemon Sun and Moon comes out, I'll come up with some more thoughts to share with you guys. But I hope you guys enjoyed this first sort of experiment with this sweet vlog thing. Let me know if you liked it down in the comments below. Leave a like if you like this video as well. Subscribe to me if you haven't already if you want to see more of my stuff, mostly gameplay stuff, also some theory stuff. I've got a top 10 favorite Generation 1 Pokemon video on the way, just editing has been killer for it because it's a bit of a longer edited video than I've done in the past. But it is coming, I promise. So yeah, this has been a sweet vlog, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.